blood on the horizon, the untamed collision of Columbus and a world aflame. They didn't chart a new dawn. They ignited a firestorm on shores already drenched in crimson. October 12, 1492. The Santa Maria groans as its hull kisses the sands of an island soon dubbed Hispaniola, a speck in the vastness of the Caribbean. Christopher Columbus, a lean figure with salt-crusted beard and eyes burning with zeal, leaps ashore, cross in one hand, sword in the other. He kneels, mutters a prayer to a distant god, and drives Spain's banner into the earth, claiming it all land, sea, souls for Ferdinand and Isabella. But this isn't some untouched wilderness bowing to its savior. It's a crucible, seething with life and strife. The Taíno emerge from the palms, their faces painted with curiosity and caution, their villages alive with the rhythm of generations. Beyond them, the Americas sprawl untamed civilizations rising and falling, trade routes humming, and battlegrounds scarred by wars older than memory. Columbus didn't stumble into paradise. He crashed into a saga already written in blood and fire. What erupted wasn't a gentle meeting of worlds. It was a collision that shattered nations, a tale of clashing steel, ravaged lives, and a legacy so vast, so savage, it defies the neat boxes of hero or villain. Hold tight for an epic that peels back the myths, plunging you into a whirlwind of conquest, courage, and carnage that'll grip you to the last word. Let's rewind the tape, far beyond that fateful dawn. The Americas weren't a sleeping Eden, they were a furnace, forged by centuries of conflict that shaped tribes into warriors. In the Northeast, the Iroquois and Huron weren't mere neighbors. They were locked in a feud that turned the woodlands into a graveyard. Picture the 1600s. An Iroquois war party, shadows in the mist, descends on a Huron settlement. Torches flare, thatch roofs erupt in flames, and warriors' clash hatchets sink into flesh. Screams pierce the night. The victors drag captives back, tying them to stakes. Fires crackle as the condemned are roasted alive, their cries a chilling hymn to Iroquois might. By 1656, they'd turned their wrath on the Erie tribe, a campaign of annihilation. War cries echoed as villages burned, hundreds fell, and scalps hung like banners from Iroquois belts. The Erie didn't just lose, they vanished, erased from history's ledger. This wasn't a spat, it was a brutal chess match for land, furs, and fear. Pivot south to the sun, bleach southwest, where the Apache reigned like specters of death. They'd strike the Pima and Tohono O'odham at dawn, hooves thundering across the desert, leaving chaos in their wake. A Pima elder might have clutched his bow, rasping, "There the wind gone with our blood," as smoke rose from his shattered camp. Horses stolen, granaries looted, warriors gutted. It was a rhythm of survival, etched into the sands. Up on the Great Plains, the Lakota Sioux carved their legend in the 1700s, muscling out the Omaha and Pawnee with ruthless precision. One dusk in 1750, a Lakota band ambushes a Pawnee hunting party. Arrows whistle, knives flash, dozens crumple, their scalps lifted high as the Lakota howl in triumph. No prisoners, only ghosts. A war chief bellows, plunging his blade into a captive's chest. By 1800, they'd seized a dominion from Minnesota to Montana, every acre a trophy won in blood. Now ride to the southern plains, where the Comanche held court as undisputed lords of terror. From the 1700s to the 1800s, they turned Texas into their fortress, their raids a nightmare unleashed. The Tonkawa and Lipan Apache faced their fury, villages razed, women and children snatched for trade or servitude, men staked out under the merciless sun, scalped and left to scream. A Spanish settler in 1770s, Texas scratched a frantic note. They hauled the chief off, laughing as he begged said the buzzards would dance on his bones. By 1830, they'd driven the Apache south, leaving Mexico to reel from the shockwaves. Thousands perished or vanished into slavery, their fates a grim echo in Comanche songs. Defy us, and you're dust. The bones don't lie. At Crow Creek, South Dakota, in the 1320s, over a century before Columbus's sails, someone butchered 486 souls in a single savage dawn. Archaeologists unearthed the carnage, skulls split like melons, hands chopped off, children's spines bristling with arrowheads. No mercy, no survivors. The attackers, likely early Sioux, craved the land and its corn. They took it, leaving a silent slaughter as their mark. This wasn't an outlier. It was the pulse of tribal warfare, raw and relentless, etched into the earth, long before Europe cast its shadow. Yet not every corner rang with war cries. The Hopi tilled their fields under quiet skies, their lives tied to the harvest rather than the spear. The Iroquois wove a confederacy not to sing peace songs, but to crush rivals as one. The Comanche didn't haggle, they conquered. The Sioux didn't share the plains, they claimed them. Peace glimmered in patches, but violence roared across the continents, fueled by survival, territory, and the fierce pride of nations, unbroken. When Columbus's boots hit the shore, he didn't spark bloodshed. In a vacuum, he plunged into a tempest already raging. His savagery wasn't the first flame. It was a torch tossed onto a pyre centuries high. And what a torch he bore. Columbus stormed Hispaniola like a warlord, his dreams dripping with gold and blessed by a crown hungry for empire. In May 1493, Pope Alexander VI, Intercaetera bull, fell like a divine hammer. Spain could claim any pagan lands west of a line 100 leagues from the Azores, convert the souls. Yes, but fill the coffers first. Columbus gripped that edict like a battle standard. He didn't see the Taíno as people, he saw pawns. By 1494, he'd unfurled the encomienda system, a twisted pact where Spanish settlers and comanderos snagged land and the natives on it. Protect and baptize them? A noble lie. In truth, it was slavery draped in piety. Every Taíno over 14 owed tribute gold dust weighed in hawk's bells, due every 3 months. Miss the mark? The price was your life, or worse. He raised Fort Santo Tomas, La Navidad bristling with muskets and menace, outposts to enforce his will. When the Taíno dared resist, he didn't parley, he struck. By 1496, his rule was so brutal that even Spain recoiled. He's choking the island to death. A gaunt colonist scratched in a plea to the crown, as settlers starved and natives withered under his lash. In 1500, Francisco de Bobadilla, a royal enforcer, sailed in to sniff out the rot. He found a wasteland colonies crumbling, graves overflowing, a realm unraveling. Columbus was shackled, hauled back to Spain to answer for tyranny, too vicious even for a conquest-mad empire. But the beast he'd birthed kept gnashing, its jaws locked on the new world. The carnage was a descent into madness. Bartolomé de las Casas, a priest who sailed with Columbus, penned horrors that claw at the soul. Spanish soldiers made death a sport. They'd rip Taíno infants from their mothers, hurl them into rivers, and wager on the splashes. 20 reals, says I drowned 4. One might have roared, cackling as babies sank. Men who couldn't scrape up, gold-faced machetes hands severed, left dangling by threads as they bled out in the mud. Las Casas watched 20 Taíno bound to stakes in 1495, throats slashed for hiding grain, their bodies dumped for the dogs to gnaw. Women bore the brunt. Rape was a soldier's prize. A captain once smashed into a hut, pinned a Taíno woman down, and snarled, "You're mine, tell your people to bow," as her husband sobbed, broken. Gold was their idol, and natives their offering. In 1495, Columbus launched a slave raid that netted 1,500 Arawak men, women, kids herded like cattle, chains biting their wrists. The strongest 500 were stuffed into ships for Spain's markets. 200 perished en route, suffocating in the dark or starving on moldy crusts. Plenty more to pluck, a sailor might have grunted, kicking a corpse into the sea. Back on Hispaniola, the rest were driven to the mine's black, airless pits where whips cracked and bones snapped. Las Casas saw it, hundreds hunched over, digging until they collapsed, fed husks or nothing. One mine lost 60 in a month, their bodies stacked like firewood. By 1499, clans dissolved, the Taínos 250,000 souls spiraling toward extinction. Then came the unseen slayer, disease. Smallpox slipped ashore with Columbus's crew in 1493, a phantom that killed without a blade. Measles and flu trailed behind, shredding a people with no shield. Fevers blazed, sores bloomed, lungs choked on phlegm. A Taíno healer might have knelt by a dying boy, whispering, "The spirits are blind," as pustules swallowed him whole. On Hispaniola, the fall was apocalyptic, 250,000 in 1492, 14,000 by 1517, a few thousand by 1,540. Bloodlines faded, 80–90% gone in decades. Across the ocean, the Aztecs met the same fate. Hernán Cortés marched into Tenochtitlan in 1519, 25 million strong. Smallpox tagged along, unleashed by an infected slave. By 1521, half lay dead streets heaped with corpses. By 1600, only 2 to 3 million endured. Bernal Diaz retched at the sight. "We waded through rot, the stench was a shroud." Columbus didn't craft the plagues, but he didn't halt them. His machine encomienda, tribute, terror churned death, gold flowing to Spain as natives paid in flesh. Babies dashed on rocks, hands hacked off. Villages raised his men savored it. Spain endorsed it, grew fat on it. Las Casas counted 3 million lost across the Caribbean by 1550, half by steel, half by germs. Planned, not quite. Columbus didn't seed smallpox, but he built the stage it ravaged. His shadow isn't just bloodstains, it's a people erased, half by blades, half by an invisible reaper. History doesn't absolve, it dissects. But widen the lens, and Columbus isn't the lone fiend in this brutal opera. Violence wasn't his brainchild, it was humanity's heartbeat, pounding through the ages. In 1066, William the Conqueror stormed England, cleaving Anglo-Saxons, torching homes, piling bodies to claim his crown, thousands dead in a season. Genghis Khan swept Asia in the 1200s, leveling cities like Khwarezm, 40 million slain. Nations scrubbed from the map under Mongol hooves. Rome crushed Carthage in 146 BC, enslaving 50,000, salting the ashes. The Aztecs tore out 20,000 hearts and 1487 priests, chanting, "The gods thirst," as blood slicked Tenochtitlan stones. Columbus didn't forge the script, he played it, fierce and unyielding, on a new frontier. Historians sift the wreckage. Carlos Martinez Shaw slices it clean. He didn't plot genocide, but his sails unleashed doom. No grand design, just greed that spiraled into obliteration. Steve Hackle burrows deeper. Don't stack every sin on him, but he lit the fuse for centuries of ruin. His men slashed, enslaved, and let plagues run rampant. Spain turned it into profit. Yet the rhythm's ancient power praise always has. Norman swords, Mongol bows, Roman spears all crushed to climb. Columbus just sailed it west. Here's the gut punch. He wasn't alone in the slaughter. Natives waged their own wars, Iroquois raids, Comanche stakes, Sioux ambushes. Crow Creek's 486, dead howlet. Violence was no stranger here. Both sides drew blood, took lives, claimed ground. Columbus's hands were drenched slavery, mutilation, Millions gone, but the Taíno weren't monks, and their neighbors weren't doves. History's no clean split of saints and devils. It's a brawl, raw and tangled. So where's the truth? Columbus unleashed a maelstrom, systematic, relentless, a death knell that rang across continents. No washing that away. But he didn't invent bloodshed, he joined a chorus already screaming. Native tribes fought fierce Iroquois scalps, Comanche terror, Sioux conquests long before his shadow loomed. Neither side spotless, both lived hard. The past isn't a fable, it's a sprawling, jagged pile of human nature, layered with guts, grit, and gore. To judge it, you've got to face it all: the invader's sword, the local spears, the whole damn inferno. Columbus wasn't the only hand on the blade. He was one history snared, mid-strike. Crave more?